Good evening. Thank you for participating in the 2020 SEO Scholars Achievement Benefit and for joining us for a conversation with Robert Smith and Henry Kravitz. We're incredibly fortunate to have two titans of the private equity industry join us for a conversation and to have them share their perspectives on their professional journeys, their leadership philosophies, and their philosophies around philanthropy. I'm David Breach, and I'm a member of the SEO board in San Francisco. I also serve as the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Legal Officer for Vista Equity Partners. I was based in San Francisco, but recently transplanted to Austin, Texas. It's always a daunting task to introduce two gentlemen who need no introductions, but I've been tasked to do it anyways. So let me kick off with a quick blurb about each of our esteemed guests. So first, I'd like to introduce Robert Smith, who is the founder, CEO, and chairman of Vista Equity Partners. More importantly, he's one of my best friends. Vista is a leading investor in technology, software, and tech-enabled businesses with about 58 billion in cumulative capital commitments across private equity, permanent capital, private debt, and a hedge fund. Well, Robert has had an incredible journey as a private equity investor and leader. He's had an equally incredible journey as a transformative philanthropist, focusing tirelessly on how to liberate the human spirit and how to create opportunities for those both in the United States and globally. I'd next like to introduce Henry Kravitz, who is the co-chair, co-founder, and co-CEO of KKR, one of the premier private equity firms in the globe. He founded the firm in 1976, and they now have over 200 billion in AUM, so something for Robert and I to strive for. In 2009, he founded SEO's alternative investment program along with TPG. Since assuming the role of SEO's national board chair in 2014, he's been a tireless champion for SEO's Scholars Program, doubling the size of its New York presence and effect in scope, as well as actively generating support for our efforts in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he's just been an incredible supporter, both financially and in terms of thought leadership. So we've been given until, I guess, 6 p.m., depending on your time zone. So why don't we jump into some questions and hear from these two terrific leaders. So the first question, I'm gonna direct it initially for Robert, but I definitely want both of you to answer. But as you look back on your careers, what are the key moments or opportunities that you were given that set you up for success and gave you the opportunity to transform your professional experience and your professional trajectory? Robert, if you'd go first, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and thank you, David, for the kind and thoughtful introduction. And Henry, so good to see you, my friend, and always a pleasure to share any form of screen or stage with an icon and a legend, and truly one of the people I've always looked up to in this industry. And David, when I think about the theme today, seizing the opportunity, and how that played into my career and what were the transformative moments, there were a few that come to mind, and I'll just mention a couple of them. One is, I was able to, throughout my career, from time to time, find a good mentor, and sometimes adopt that mentor and convince them that I was worthy of mentorship. I remember an early relationship I had was when I was an intern at Bell Laboratories. And my mentor, again, this was a gentleman had a PhD in solid state physics, well over 30 patents to his name. And I convinced him through the hard work diligence and doggedness, shall I say, that I exhibited every day, and persistence in the work that I did, that I was worthy of him really taking me under his wing and helping me really, I'll call it, embrace one of the things that has changed my life, which is discover the joy of figuring things out. And what he did was he would posit a challenging technical question, and then he would say, come back when you have questions and how you think you want to solve it. And I'd go do my research in the library and talk to all the members of the staff who I thought had relevant information. I would come back and ask him a series of questions. And he would literally take whatever time it took, sometimes hours, on the whiteboard and in conversation to answer the questions that I then had. And then he'd say, okay, come back when you have some more questions. And what I learned from that were a number of things. One was to challenge yourself to understand, to figure out the complex questions and come up with what I call the elegant solutions to these complex questions. I also learned to extend myself to a person who had a very different background, different set of experiences than I did, and figure out ways to engage with them on areas that we both had of interest. And I also learned the importance, on the flip side, of taking the time to teach, to mentor, to counsel. And the importance of that I learned more about later in my career, as I started to see people flourish who I had a chance to mentor and work with. All of that at the end of the day, for me, starts with having a fundamental, I'll call it, sound education that gave me tools to decouple questions and problems. And that's why I think the SEO program is so essential and needed, not only today, but needs to continue to expand, because it equips these young people with tools and tutelage, mentorship, and frankly, additional educational opportunities that enable them to challenge or tackle some of the more challenging problems that they will face in their careers, and frankly, that we're going to face as a country. So I applaud, first, Henry, for the tireless work for well over a decade that you've done with SEO, taking on the challenges, the fundraising, the expansion of opportunity, and finding a wonderful staff and leadership in William to actually drive this organization forward, and just delighted to be a supporter and a part of this organization for all that it represents.
Thanks, Robert. Henry, I don't know if I always joked around that I used to get paid to talk, and I could talk for a long time. Robert wasn't paid to talk, but he can go. Henry, do you need me to repeat the question, or are you ready to share some key transformational moments that set you up for success?
Let me first of all thank you, David, for chairing this dinner tonight and doing such an incredible job of raising the necessary funds with others by your side to make sure that SEO San Francisco is in great shape for the next few years, at least. Secondly, Robert Smith is my friend. Robert has been somebody I have looked up to and admired enormously in what he's been able to accomplish with Vista Equity. So being on a program with him, when I was asked to do it, I said, well, that's easy. I'd love to do that. And so, Robert, thank you for agreeing to do this to help SEO as well. A couple points in my life where somebody made a huge difference. Number one goes back to my senior year in high school, when I had a teacher by the name of Jim Wilson, and he taught economics. And I didn't exactly know what economics was, the course, but he talked me into taking it, and I liked him a lot. And so he'd been a coach also at the school. So I took it, and that led me on the path that I wanted to go. I said, it's definitely going to be in business. My father was a petroleum engineer, kept wanting me to do something in the oil and gas business with him on the engineering side, and I didn't really want to do it. I wanted to do something totally on my own down the road. And so I didn't do that, but Jim helped me a lot in thinking through what I wanted to do in high school. That led me then to pick a college. I went to Claremont McKenna College, and I went there for a specific reason. And that was they had an extremely strong economics department. It was a small school, and I knew I'd have full or associate professors in every course I would take. I wouldn't have teaching assistants. So I chose it for that reason. And so that was number one. I became an economic major. That led then, I got lucky and started working on Wall Street every summer when I was in college. So I drive from California to New York. I worked at Goldman Sachs. And when I arrived there, I didn't know exactly what Goldman Sachs did. My dad had helped get me this job. So I show up there with the person I'm supposed to see. And he said, "Where do you want to start?" They had no training program. This is summer 1964. And I said, "Well, I don't know, at the bottom. I've never been to Wall Street before, and I'm not quite sure what you all do. So the bottom." And he said, "That'll be a runner." And I thought, well, I didn't know what a runner was, but I said, okay, I ran track in high school. I can do this. That's easy. Well, a runner was somebody delivered stock certificates. And I got lucky, and that led then to working in the research department, which then led to my last summer, my third summer there, being in corporate finance and in institutional sales. They split the summer for me. So that was one really good change and a motivation for me. I got to see a lot of things, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be an investment banker or not. So I went to work at I got a job for the summer at the Madison Fund, which was a closed-in fund, about $350 million of assets under management. Keep in mind, this is 1967. And I worked for a man there named Ed Merkel. And so he gave me a few industries to cover. And here I am right out of college, literally out of college. And he said, "Start buying stocks." Well, I'd never bought a stock in my life. I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know, was I doing the research right or not? He said, you're going to be fine. So I did that, and I started picking some stocks, and as luck would have it, the stocks went up. He then came into my office one day and he said, "Kid," he used to call me Kid. He said, "Kid, I want you to go out and call on Roy Disney at the Disney Company." And I said to him, "Who's going with me?" And he said, "Nobody." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to go see Roy Disney." Walt Disney had died the year before, and Roy was the CEO. His brother was the CEO at the time. And he said, "No, you're going out on your own." So I wrote out all my questions. I read everything I possibly could have read, 10Ks, 10Qs, annual reports, research reports, you name it, because I was scared to death to go see him. And I arrive at his office in the morning, and he says to me, "Nice to meet you." He said, "Let me make one thing very clear to you, Henry. I've got 1 hour, and that's it." I was thrilled with the 1 hour. And I also didn't tell him I am scared to death to be sitting in his office talking to him, literally having just graduated from college a few months before. And so we started talking about his company. I was asking him lots of questions. He said, "Geez, you know a lot about my company." And he said, "Most analysts that come out here, they haven't even read the annual report." And he said, "Because you really have paid attention to the company and obviously know a lot about it, I know I told you you'd only have an hour, but I want to change that. I want you to spend the rest of the day with me, and you can go to all my meetings." That was when you could do it. The SEC would let you do it. "And then at the end of the day, I'm going to take you on a personal tour of the Disney studio and lot." And I had just died and gone to heaven, because it was one of the great lessons for me that if you've done the work, it doesn't matter how old you are. He never asked me how old you are, how long you've been doing this or anything else. He just knew that I knew something about his company and I cared enough about his company. So he wanted to make sure I got everything I could get out of that. So that was really the motivations I had early on. My father was a great motivator, and I can go on and on, but I'm not going to, I'll stop at that, David.
That's an incredible story. Picturing a young Henry Kravitz with Roy Disney is something that I'll remember. So Henry, what is you obviously lead a large organization that you built from the ground up, and I'd love to kind of hear from you, especially at this point in your career when you've had so much success. What motivates you as a leader? What are the values that you bring as you're leading your organization?
Well, there's a lot of things that motivate me. First of all, I love seeing other people succeed. I'm also, what motivates me is seeing friends of mine succeed. Seeing Robert Smith build an incredible firm with your other partners. I think it's fantastic what was, and I've got other friends. I love trying new ideas and selling them to the team. We have a saying at the firm, throw enough stuff up, something will stick. And that's sort of how, I've lived my business career, figuring out strategies, what new things that we can do. That motivates me, seeing the firm working well and fitting into the culture that we had set up when we founded the firm, which is a culture of inclusion where everybody gets paid whether and participates in every deal we do, whether you worked on the deal, you weren't. And that was 44 years ago. And here we are, gone from 1976 to 2020. And we have exactly the same culture, except we have 1,400 employees now at the firm and 21 offices. So I love seeing that culture continue to hold up 44 years later. And that's what motivates me, where I'm make sure that all our people are living by our culture and our value system. I love building a team. That's what motivates me, and seeing that team succeed, seeing that team work together. So if you think about it, when we shut down and went to Zoom calls the 15th of March, my first day at home, I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Here, nobody's going to be talking to each other. And then I guess I'll go clean my closet out, but I didn't know what I did the second day. Well, it turned out I have yet to get to my closet, and we have been busier than we've ever been. And it's all on Zoom, or conference calls, and it has worked. And the reason I believe that we've worked as well as we have since the beginning of the year, and it's in large part because of the culture of helping each other, working together, sharing ideas. That has really made a difference. As far as my personal values, and what also motivates me, is helping those less fortunate. Like Robert, who I admire greatly, and what you've done in this area, Robert, and helping people that are in the underserved community. I get a thrill out of that. I remember one time in a drug and substance abuse program that I set up for middle school kids here in New York, and a little boy came up to my wife, Mary Jose, and me at a little cocktail party they were giving for us. And he was about as tall as the table top. And he said, Mr. and Miss Kravitz, I got to tell you, you have saved my life, and you have changed it. And I said, well, first of all, how old are you? And he said, I'm in the 8th grade. And I said, well, how have we saved your life? He said, well, I was on drugs before you set up this program. And because of this program that you set up, I am off drugs. And I promise you, Mr. Kravitz, I will never, ever go back on drugs again. And I looked at Mary Jose and I said, if only one person, that one person we've helped, the program is a success. And so I love bringing out the best in others. I love helping those that aren't able to do it on their own, but basically give them an idea. And why do I like chairing SEO so much? And by the way, if I wasn't involved with KKR, I'd hope they'd take me on at SEO and let me be chair as a full-time chair and do nothing else but that, because I love it. I love seeing the results of what we've been able to do. So helping in education is a huge part of what motivates me. It's a part of my value system. It's part of my DNA. And then communicating well, making sure people are honest and forthright, and then convincing others of your own ideas. That also motivates me, and seeing those ideas get put into to play.
Yeah. Thanks, Henry. Robert, same question to you. Talk to us about what both motivates you as a leader and what values do you bring to your approach to leadership?
Sure. Clearly, what motivates me is to be half as good as Henry. Henry truly is the embodiment of what it means to be not only a consummate professional, but an enlightened human being. And I strive every day towards those goals. And it's so wonderful to see Henry embody them, and not only his words, but his actions, his deeds. He and Marie Jose and the work that they do in the communities that they touch is unparalleled, and frankly will reverberate for generations, just as it did with that young boy. I mean, those are the sorts of stories that motivate and should motivate all of us to realize what our importance is on this planet, and how the work that we can do can enable more opportunities for many more people. I think about in the firm and in our company, culture is the most important thing for us to continue to cultivate, to build, to grow. And it is the culture that makes us successful. That culture of helping each other, working together, solving problems is something that we started from day one, and wanted to ensure that we build structures and systems and infrastructure that continues to reinforce that culture. We are, again, a 20-year-old startup at this point. And part of how we keep that startup mentality is to always think about, well, what can we do to make something better? The way we underwrite, the way we engage, the way we train, the way we teach, the way we support the development of all people who become part of the Vista family, which is what we call it, which is what it is. And not all things are perfect in a family, but I think if you have the ability to engage and talk about what you want to fix, that's one of the most important parts of being successful, is engaging on the challenges. When I think about what our goals are, and what my goal specifically as a leader is, and I say this is, my job is to really create an environment where people can become their best selves. We all are different backgrounds, different views, adding those perspectives into how we manage, operate, underwrite, encourage, train, develop, from portfolio companies to our own firm, is an important part of how we can be successful. And so I have to think about with my senior leadership team, how do you create enough space, enough opportunity for people to bring their ideas in and have those ideas vetted and discussed and embraced or challenged in ways that are supportive and developmental, as opposed to necessarily abusive and judgmental. And part of that, of course, is encouraging people, somewhat to the story that Henry talked about, to be prepared, to do their work, to be thorough, and bring that forward. And then the personal joy that I get out of that comes in a couple of dimensions. One is to see people actually gaining the confidence of conviction based on experiences that they've had at our firm, and how they have been successful, and how they've engaged in being a junior person, engaging with a very senior portfolio executive, and driving home a point that transforms that business, and having a very successful outcome for that executive and that executive's management team. Those are some wonderful experiences that I think we uniquely get in the world of private equity. The other thing that I enjoy is really, and I frame it as coming up with elegant solutions to complex problems. And we started as a firm focused on doing, buyouts and enterprise software. And as we expand our product dimensions and opportunity, and in areas that really support what I call our growth in a very holistic way and organic way, and coming up with the unique solutions to how we're going to approach credit, and how we're going to approach, the public equity, and how we're going to approach various relationships with our limited partners, and the way that we invest together. Those are some of the things that bring tremendous joy. And I think that joy then resonates throughout our organization to say, new ideas are welcome. New ideas will be vetted, and we'll look to manifest them into business opportunities that we all can benefit from. And that's a little bit of what I call the individual, and what I think about in the work that I do outside of Vista. It is creating those environments to liberate the human spirit, where people can become their best selves, and provide opportunities for them to participate not only in what I call the great economic experiment called America, but also, be very much a part of the communities and deliver back to the communities what they have learned. And I think that holistically is how I like to look to manage not only Vista, but the things that I engage in personally.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robert. It's interesting. This was set up for 30 minutes, and listening to the two of you share your thoughts, it's incredible how quickly this time can go by. We've only got a few minutes left, and I'd like to ask each of you, starting with Henry, on our journeys, we spend a lot of our life working hard, trying to, achieve success and whatnot. And then we get into this phase in our life where we can start to think about philanthropy. And I know for myself personally, there are specific events that have driven my perspective on how I want my philanthropy to be expressed. And if each of you could just take a minute to give us an example of an event that occurred that really became a guiding principle for, your philanthropic activities going forward.
Robert, why don't you lead off?
Sure. Mine started when I was a child, and I saw my parents were school teachers, and my mother, who was with us in our bubble of COVID, who's now 86 years old, and we were chatting about it. And at the time, she made $4,200 a year, but yet she took $25 a month and wrote a check to the United Negro College Fund every month for over 50 years. I mean, it increased over time, but she always looked and said, the most important thing you can do, Robert, in your life, you may be successful in other ways. I think she wanted me to be a doctor or something, but she said, you have to be meaningful to your community. You have to deliver things that, again, liberate your community in ways that enable other people to build upon your success, just as you're building upon the success of your father and I, and they were both school teachers. So I look at that as the early guiding light that I think about literally every day, about, am I doing the things to enable my community to be more successful, and to enable individuals in that community to again, realize their dreams as humans and human spirits.
Well, thank you, Robert. We should probably thank your mother for putting you on this path. Henry, if you could take a minute to talk to us about an event that has really formed the fulcrum of your philanthropic perspective.
Well, like Robert, I started very young too by just watching my parents, and they were involved in a number of not-for-profit organizations in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I grew up. And so I watched that. I watched the pleasure that each of them received from that. And then fast forward, I was in business as KKR. I was a young person in my early 40s, and I was making a little money, not a lot, but I wanted to start thinking about intelligent giving. It's hard to give money away intelligently, I believe. You can give it away easily, but give it intelligently is tough. So I called who I thought was probably the best and maybe one of the best in our lifetime philanthropist, and that was David Rockefeller, who I knew. And I said, David, could you and I have lunch? And he said, sure, I'd love to. And at lunch, I said to him, look, I'm young. I'm, growing our business. I'm making a little money right now. I don't have a lot, but I want your recommendation as to what I should do. And he said, look, Henry, I'm not going to tell you where you should give. That you have to come from the heart, give from, your what really interests you and what moves you. And he said, but I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Whatever you do, don't just write a check, get involved. He said, you will get incredible pleasure out of it, and you will be much more impactful by doing that. And I always remembered it, that he had told me that when that's 30 odd years ago. And since then, I've been fortunate, made money, and the greatest pleasures I get is not buying another company or making a credit investment or a real estate investment. My greatest pleasure right now is seeing other people smile with my ability to help them, to help those who are in need, help those who are underserved. Like Robert, I have a lot of minority students that I give scholarships to for boarding school. I give it for colleges. And I get enormous pleasure out of that. And of course, what I do with SEO is enormous pleasure as well. And so my message to everybody is it's not the amount of money that matters. It's roll up your sleeves, get involved, and you'll be really surprised how much pleasure you get out of helping other people less fortunate.
Gentlemen, I never thought that I'd have the opportunity to share the stage, so to speak, the virtual stage with the two of you. So it's really, I feel incredibly fortunate that I get to be here talking to the two of you. And I want to, thank you both, not just on behalf of SEO, but on behalf of all the people that you are touching with not only your philanthropy, but with your active involvement. And I just can't thank you both enough for taking your time tonight to join us and to enlighten a lot of folks online about how you're thinking. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our new executive director of SEO for San Francisco, Omar Wandera.
Before you do, I just want to thank Robert for doing this for SEO and sharing a platform with me. And David, thank you for your great effort once again and for moderating this portion of the program.
Thank you, Henry. Always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for your great leadership in our industry and in our country. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everyone. My name is Omar Wandera, and I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of SEO Scholars San Francisco. While I may be new to SEO, I am a longtime educator and advocate for educational equity. I was born and raised in Oakland, California, and I am the product of college access programs that forever changed the course of my life. My life's journey through education was cemented by the idea that I had to give back all that was given to me. I've spent more than 20 years doing just that. I look forward to working hand in hand with our staff, the SEO Scholars Advisory Board, and the Bay Area community to fulfill SEO Scholars' mission to transform public high school students into college graduates and change makers. I would like to take a moment to thank a number of individuals and sponsors who have contributed their time, energy, and resources to the achievement benefit. First, our speakers. Thank you to Robert and Henry for sharing your journeys, insights, and wisdom. We are a stronger community thanks to your involvement in this work. Your support of SEO is immeasurable, and I sincerely thank you for everything you have done and will continue to do for our program. Thank you to our moderator, David, whose commitment to SEO Scholars is inspiring. I appreciate your involvement as an Achievement Benefit co-chair and your leadership and support as an advisory board member. Your overall efforts to support the continuous improvement and impact of SEO's programs fuels our passion for our work and reminds us of what can happen when you put people first. This event and the work that we do would not have been possible without the generous support of all of our sponsors. I would like to personally thank the following principal and commencement sponsors: David and Emily Breach, EY, Adam and Tanya Carr, Kirkland and Ellis, Tama Bravo, Vista Equity Partners, and Henry and Marie Jose Kravitz. Lastly, thank you. Thank you to all of our sponsors and guests for tuning in and spending this evening with us. But we are not done yet. We are so excited to see all of you on October 22nd for the next Fireside Chat with Kenneth Lynn and Mickey Malka. and that is followed by our annual Achievement Benefit. We have a remarkable lineup of speakers, and we're thrilled to showcase our program and the incredible determination, perseverance, and motivation of our scholars. Visit seoscholars.org/achievement benefit for more details. Thank you, and see you on October 22nd. Good night.